Welcome, everyone. We are delighted to be hosting this webinar with you today. I'm Burke Murphy, State Coordinator of Minnesota Women in Conservation, and we have our team of regional coordinators with us, as well as our guests. I'm going to take a moment to just introduce you to MNWiC, and I'd like to begin by, oh, it's not moving forward. Okay. Oh dear. Can you see the Renewing the Countryside slide? Yes, sorry. Renewing the Countryside has been supporting and connecting stewards of the land and farms with necessary resources for now over 20 years. And it is Renewing the Countryside that has started this initiative. Why does it matter? Well, across the state of Minnesota, women producers manage over 9 million acres of farmland. And female farmers are listing their primary occupation as farming increasingly since 2017. We're now counting 35,623 women in farming, and almost 19,000 women are non-operating landowners. And this is based on the 2022 census, so we know that's really an undercount. Women are involved in every type of farming, from grain and oilseed crops to flowers and pigment producers like our Maddy Bartsch. Our objectives with Minnesota Women in Conservation are to welcome all women in agriculture and land stewardship, to increase women's knowledge, understanding, and use of conservation, in particular with natural resource conservation service programs, which we'll hear about today. And we would like to shepherd women through the process of that program assistance however we can, and ultimately build a lasting legacy of relationships and regional networks. Our team is composed of a state coordinator, a marketing and communication specialist, data management and evaluation specialist, internal team from Renewing the Countryside, and our 4 coordinators. I'm going to give you a snapshot of each region. In Allison Rian, who's co-hosting this webinar today, is within the North Central region, and you can see the amount of farmland acreage involved, the number of farms and female producers in Aiken, Itasca, and other counties. Alex Kaminsky, who is with us in the Upper Minnesota Valley region, or what we call West Central Minnesota, Lackaparl, Chippewa, and Swift counties. Again, you see the phenomenal amount of acreage and female producers and farms involved. Noreen Thomas is with us from Doubting Thomas Farm, our regional coordinator from the Northwest region, covering Clay, Norman, and Wilkin counties. Again, robust amount of farmland and women producers. Maddy Bartsch, who's also co-hosting this morning, is in the Southeast region with Goodhue, Rice, and Dakota counties. A phenomenal number of farms in Goodhue County, 738, very high number. And so how do we reach women in conservation? Through potlucks, webinars, learning circles, and field days. Here's an example of West Central Learning Circle and potluck that took place some months ago with 49 women attending. And the focus was native seeds and habitat restoration. And here is Allison hosting first Learning Circle in December with 32 attending, talking about soil health. Women have shown up with great enthusiasm at our events, both virtual and in person. And you can see from these quotes that the whole thing was great. Introductions, discussions felt very individual. Connections and resources are more abundant than I realized. And so we do have a field day coming up in West Central that Alex is hosting with partners. And that is May 15th. At the Iverson Tree Farm. And Maddy is hosting our field day here in Southeast Minnesota in July with Wendy Johnson at Hay Creek Hills Farm. And you can find all this information on our website, on our Facebook page and Instagram, so that you can register and join us. Maddy, thank you. I'll turn this back to you and stop sharing.
Awesome. Thank you, Burke.
You're welcome.
So we'll let Callie get squared away here, and then Allison, I'll pass it to you to introduce Callie to our group.
Thanks. Um, I'm really excited about this subject matter. I am in the north central, northeast region of Minnesota, and we have a lot of trees up here. Lots more trees than farmland, I think. So this is really exciting for me, and I'm really glad to have Callie here. Callie Bertsch has served as the state forester for the Minnesota Natural Resources Conservation Service for 4 years. Prior to becoming this state forester, she worked for the American Bird Conservancy on improving forest health for wildlife by collaborating on habitat projects with private landowners. Focuses were golden-winged warblers, American woodcock, and ruffed grouse. The woodcocks up here are doing their spring mating displays, and I can hear them every night, and it's amazing. If you've never heard a woodcock, you really need to look it up. Um, Callie's love for birds began when she took a field ornithology course and learned that warblers came in many colors, and she wants all people to feel included and empowered to do their best work. Um, Callie, we're really excited to hear from you, and so I'm going to hand it off to you.
Awesome, thank you. I shouldn't have unmuted because as soon as I did that, you could see I couldn't unmute myself. It is so great to be here and to speak with this group, especially about this topic. I like got a little teary seeing how many of you are coming to the group meetings because I have hosted landowner meetings and it is so hard to get people involved. So to see people showing up as like somebody, coordinators, it is our dream come true to see that people show up and are interested. So yeah, so let's get started. We have Gita, Gay, a private landowner here as well. So I'm going to mention her a few times. And I'm also jealous hearing about the woodcocks dancing because that's one of my favorite spring things. And Gita was telling me that she had a ruffed grouse on her property. And so I can only imagine like the drumming sounds as I'm sitting here in downtown St. Paul. Just really exciting for me, springtime. So yeah, so an overview, we're going to talk about, I just want to do a really basic overview of Minnesota forests, and how we as resource managers think about managing land so that I can also show you the potential resources that you could be working with, show you how to access those resources, talk about the importance of having a forest management plan, which is really the basis of moving forward with management. How you can hire certified foresters, and that will move into how you can hire loggers and contractors, using cost share programs that are available, different forestry practices that might give you an idea like, yeah, I've got that in my woods, or it doesn't apply to you, but it helps you understand when I talk about the practices that we look at. So, and then we'll move into talking to Gita and how she works and manages her land. And so, yeah, let's get started with that. So as I mentioned, I put a whole bunch of links in here. I think that they're going to be shared in the chat at the same time. And I just want you to know that these resources are out there. So I work for NRCS, which is a federal agency. It's part of the Department of Agriculture, but we rely on state and local laws as far as our planning. We call it planning procedures and conservation planning at NRCS a lot. So I'm gonna just go ahead and click on this link and then come back to the picture you see there. But the Minnesota DNR has all of these resources on their website. They've determined these ecological classification systems and land hierarchies. So you can see there's provinces, and then we go down to sections and then subsections. So I would say one of the first things you should do if you're a private landowner is go to this site, and figure out um, where you are located and what kind of site. Actually, let's take a peek. I think Gita, you mentioned that your property is down by Red Wing. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and it was called like Rochester Bluffland or something. I think
Yes.
that
So
like a handbook.
I don't know. Oh, Rochester. Let's see if we can find
It's
that.
the most southeast little section of that,
Oh, right there. Okay.
I think.
Maybe just the Blufflands. We'll stick with that for now, the Blufflands subsections. And I don't know how well you can see this screen. I'll try and but it's going to start with your landform, your bedrock geology. Bedrock is going to be the basis from where our soils form, and of course, soils give us life as well. So, usually this is also referred to as the oh, it just escaped my brain. Not just the driftless region. I'm sorry, I'm actually from Wisconsin originally, so it's fun to have the driftless region of both Wisconsin and Minnesota. And that tends to be an area where the glaciers stopped and they didn't keep coming over the landscape. And so you get like these really steep like bluffs and rivers and pretty cool geology, bedrock. Um, we'll talk about the soils. We're going to go into soils a little bit more because that's how we determine, what's going to grow there. What are the soils and the hydrology and the climate? So having all this information at your fingertips is going to help like it moves into soils, climate, hydrology, and then the pre-settlement vegetation. So what was there before the European settlement took place. So you can see your area was tallgrass prairie, bur oak savannas, red oak, white oak, shagbark, hickory, basswood forest. So really like trees that have really deep rooting systems. They can reach down deep to get water. Their longevity of growing is much longer, which is really important when we're talking about carbon sequestration and storage. Just these really cool, to me, they're really cool systems. They also support really great, if we're going to go back to my American Bird Conservancy days, some really great species of birds like cerulean warblers will live in these type of forests. So yeah, it's all just information at your fingertips that I think you should know about. And going to those links helps you find them. And maybe you've already been there and looked at them. So in, those ecological provinces in Minnesota, we have the Laurentian mixed forest, which is really going to be like how we move into the boreal forest. So when we think of boreal forest, we're thinking of like can withstand cold, harsh winters. Typically, it's coniferous forests like spruce, um, tamaracks. They're growing in really wet areas. And this area was covered by glaciers. So that's what gives us our why we have so many wetlands and lakes. I feel like I'm glossing over how glaciers formed wetlands and lakes. It's a very interesting topic that I'm going to let you research that yourself. But the Laurentian mixed forest crosses over, of course, from like Minnesota to Wisconsin, all the way over to New Hampshire. So it's a lot. You have some broadleaf forests. So when we talk about broadleaf, we're talking about like oaks and maples, aspen trees, basswood. And then it mixes with the pines and the spruce and the fir and the tamarack. So that's what's happening in this Laurentian mixed forest. And then we go down to the eastern broadleaf forest in the green area. Again, that's the area where we were just talking about where we didn't see the glaciation happen. So it's the soils promote growth of trees that are typically you're going to see like sandier soils, which isn't always the case, but I think there are a lot of clays as well in the Minnesota broadleaf in the eastern broadleaf forest. And yeah, you're a lot more of just deciduous trees. So the trees that are what we call mast producing, so they're really good for wildlife because they're producing like an acorn or a seed. Really great habitat. So walnuts, of course, that's an obvious one. So yeah, and then of course, like the beauty of Minnesota is that we are on that area that shifts into prairie. And so we go from the forest into the prairie land, and up in the north, we have what we call tallgrass aspen parkland. So it's just like not a lot of trees in the understory, and just like aspen trees growing for days. So it's really unique to this area. And again, that's our four main ecological provinces. And then from there you can like find your subregion and find what is specific to your area. Another really important thing, I'm going to click on this link, is the Minnesota native plant communities. And it's going to go through your different forest types as well, but talk about, let's find one, upland forests and woodlands. And so all of these woodlands and native plant communities have been given a name, and it helps us know how to manage for them. Generally, I can see like a northern dry music mixed woodland right here, and you know what type of trees are going to be growing in that area. Obviously, north indicates what part of the state we're in. It's going to talk again about your natural history. Red pine and white pine are the dominant in the canopy. This is very forestry talk, your dominant canopy species, and then what you have in like your midsection and your understory. So yeah, and so this is a lot of like guiding us into what should be growing here based on the soils and the geology and the bedrock, the hydrology, all of these factors that combine into helping us know what should be growing there. Of course, through in the early 1900s, the loggers came through and pretty much logged all of the giant white pines out of the forest. And so this is something that happened across the lake states, Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. So it's very common to see that our forests are in this like state of regrowth. And so how do we manage this to bring back not only like the purity of these like native plant communities, which is really hard because invasive species has been introduced through this process. If you had only just giant white pines growing, you're not going to see the wildlife that we see today that doesn't support the habitat that deer need or that a lot of our young forest songbirds need. So there's just a lot of different components that go into this and make it a very interesting way to manage our forests, or at least I see it that way. I think a lot of people take a different perspective. Are we managing for timber production and boards and cords? Are we managing for wildlife? Are we just managing to bring back this natural ecosystem that should be existing here? So yeah, so I'd be curious. I think there are probably comments going into the chat, and I would be curious to know what people are talking about and how you all are managing your property. But I think having Gita here too, I don't know, Gita, feel free to jump in at any time too if any of this resonates with you and what you're doing on your property. Another really important resource that I don't know, there's different apps out there that actually will show you like where you're standing, what your soil type is, but we've been working with soil scientists for many years who have been mapping the soils across the United States. And so that information goes into this web soil survey. And I just want to show you this resource, because anybody can go in here and look at all this information. So again, we're just going to zoom in, and you have all these tools up here, and I hope I don't spend too long on this, but it's always pretty interesting to me. But you can create an area of interest. Let's just zoom in a little bit more. I'm probably not getting to the right spot where Gita is at, but create an area of interest. This is going to be a pretty big one, I think. So sometimes if it's too big, it doesn't give you all the information you're looking for. Oh yeah, multiple soil survey. Okay, so that's fine. So, you've created this area, and then you can come over to your soil map. And it's going to tell you all the soils. Oh yeah, I went way too big. So all these soil units that are in this area. And again, this is going to help you know, like, actually, let me just show you. So you go to the Soil Data Explorer, And over here, you see all this information, and I work with our state soil scientist, and he has been updating a lot of the soils and putting in so much information like land management, so construction limitations for haul roads and log landings, and that's important if you're going to do a timber harvest. So certain soils are only going to support timber harvest on frozen ground, and you're not going to want to take this heavy equipment in there. So yeah, you can look at your erosion hazards, soil suitability ratings for, like, there's even one for if you want to plant industrial hemp. I don't know if there's any information in there, but yeah, all these different suitabilities and things that you might find. Vegetative productivity. So like there's an aspen productivity index in here, and I don't know if anything will pop up because we're not really in prime aspen country down here, but you can view the rating right there. Yeah, so you have to know what the ratings mean, and there is a description here that would probably tell you, but there's it looks like it's a percentage. So I just put too many, I made our area too big, so there's too many map units in there. But I just want you to know that this is a resource available. You can go play around in here. You're going to see ecological sites, and NRCS actually has its own ecological site descriptions that we have been working on, and they're hopefully lining up with the state information, but they are a little bit different. So that's just one important thing to notice. But you usually get a report down here at the bottom, like, is this usually flooded? What's my distance to my bedrock? And all this, I don't know. I think it's fascinating information. So hopefully everybody else does as well. So that's just one thing to know. Once you have all your soils information, you can take that, and we have a lot of tools. So again, I'm probably gonna overload everybody with our tools, but NRCS has a field office tech guide that is available to the public. So you can go in here anytime, click your state, and then if you come over here in the section 4 in the conservation practice standards, I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but you see all of our practices that we provide technical assistance and financial assistance on. So that information is located here, but you can also find relating back to that soils information in section 2. And I don't expect anybody to remember this, so just send me an email. But these conservation tree and shrub groups. So this is interesting if you're looking to plant trees or even for how you manage, and they'll come up with a file that you can take your soil type that you found in Web Soil Survey and input it in here, and it'll provide you a list. It'll provide you with a list. Oh, it's gonna be a little bit tricky. You go to your soils, put in the soils that you found for your site, and within one of these groups, it just pops up a list of all the potential trees that you could plant there. And so it's just really useful information that people have spent quite a bit of time on. So these links will, like I said, should be available to you. I'll provide the presentation. So yeah, let's move from talking, about that really basic like overview of what's happening in the Minnesota forest to getting forest management plans. I don't know of any forester you'll talk to who wouldn't recommend some sort of plan on your property, and that involves typically having a forester or other professional come out, walk through and do a forest inventory on your land. And so they're taking plot data of the types of trees, the dominant canopy species, what your something called basal area is. So we're just trying to get an idea of the volume of trees on that site. So as we manage, if we're going to do some active management, either for wildlife or for timber production, we know how to manage once we know this data. Yeah, so having a forest management plan, you don't even have, sometimes just having a plan and knowing what's on your property can be helpful. For NRCS, we usually require it to move forward with any of our other practices because we want you to know what's happening. And we want to know that we're doing this in accordance with sound science based on your soils, again, based on your any other components, and mostly based on your goals and objectives. So any plan should be based on what you want to do with your property. There are many ways to get started. You can go to the Minnesota NRCS website and find a field office. We do have foresters working in our field offices who can come assist you. The DNR private land foresters, I forgot to put a link in here for the soil and water conservation districts. They have a lot of foresters that work with us as well. They can even they could write you a forest management plan or get you connected with a private land forester. I'll click on this link because this is where the department or the DNR has a website of their certified, stewardship plan writer map. So you can just go to your county and find, let's go to St. Louis, and here this little list of private consultant foresters will pop up. And always working with a private consultant forester is somebody you have to feel comfortable with. You can go through the list and contact each of them and shop around, find out who you feel comfortable working with. It's just like kind of any other consumer driven product where you're not going to buy something if you don't like it. So make sure that you shop around and like the person you're working with. So yeah, they even list some soil and water conservation district foresters in there. So, and DNR foresters that can help you out. So yeah, that's a pretty simple way to go in and figure out who to work with. Are there any questions? I see the screen keeps popping up every time I think something's put in the chat. So feel free to interrupt me as I shift into talking about the kind of the technical assistance we can provide with NRCS.
We won't worry about questions quite yet, Callie.
Perfect. Okay.
We'll cover them at the end.
Okay, awesome.
And we want to make sure we've got enough time for Geeta's
Yes.
experiences too. So I know you
Yep.
need to have more of a collaborative presentation towards the end, but
Yeah.
we want to make sure we're moving along.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So I think we're almost to that point where we'll have Geeta talk about what she's doing. So
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to mention these, I don't even know if I'll mention them. Forestry practices I'll highlight. So forestry and improvement is just something that we call, once you have your forest management plan and you know how you need to move forward. So sometimes you hear terms like a clear cut or like a seed tree release or different terms like that. And that's what happens in forestry and improvements. The brush management I will highlight because I think Geeta will talk quite a bit about that as well. And that's one of the practices we offer to help manage for invasive species. We do have tree planting, and these are practices where we provide the technical assistance, but there could also be cost share assistance available with them as well. Prescribed fire, of course, is a whole nother topic in itself, but we offer that, getting a prescribed fire plan and putting that in the forest land. Of course, with any timber harvest comes the need for forest trails and landings and closing those trails and landings. So that's allowing your equipment to come through. Sometimes you might need to cross like a stream. And so you want to either do that in the winter time when the ground is frozen or have a plan in place so that you're not destroying or creating a resource concern there. Agroforestry practices are becoming very big in Minnesota. We have a lot of partners promoting these. Silvopasture, where we have animals in a prescribed grazing system in with the trees. Windbreaks. Forest farming is kind of manipulating forest canopy to grow things like potentially ginseng or mushrooms or berries in that canopy setting. So I think if we go ahead and move over to Geeta, we can talk about some of how we offer cost share, but just so you know, it's voluntary, non-regulatory. We don't ever report anything we see. You're coming to us because you have what you consider a resource concern, which is the forest management or wildlife habitat or something like that. So, and we offer it through a couple of different programs called the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. This is all available on our website too, or the conservation stewardship program. So it's either you get like a one-time payment to do the work, or you're in a contract for 5 years and you get paid annually with the conservation stewardship program. Yeah, let's move into okay, one thing I will highlight this. So in Minnesota, we have
Don't rush.
forest. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, don't rush quick, or it's
Oh
fine.
yeah. Okay. We have the Forest Resources Council in Minnesota, and they've developed these resource guidelines. So if you, for any reason, ever move towards this idea of managing or doing a timber sale or logging for whatever reason, you want to make sure that you're following these. They're voluntary guidelines, but I think most of the foresters and loggers are following them. So it's going to have information about like preventing large ruts and how you want to create your trails and landings so that you're having minimum impact to the site. So that link is there with the Minnesota Forest Resources Council. There's also a really great guide on the Minnesota University of Minnesota Extension website. And again, I don't know of any forester that's going to say, don't work with a forester. Like you should be working with a forester first, have that plan. The forester will actually they can help you bid out your timber. They can help you hire a logger. You can see this here. So you want to require proof of membership in the Minnesota Logger Education Program so that we know that loggers are following the Minnesota Forest Resources guidelines for timber sales and just following good, like sustainable conservation when they're logging. So I know a lot of times if you're logging specifically for wildlife habitat, if I go back to my American Bird Conservancy days with golden winged warblers, we did do we call it clear cuts with reserve. So you're doing a lot of like early successional, setting back the succession of the forest by cutting down all the aspen, but you still want to leave a certain amount of retention or leaf trees. And so you want to make sure that your logger is doing that by I don't know if by the books is the right term, but that's what's coming to my head right now, so I'll say it. So yeah, so the foresters can help mark your trees. They can help set up the timber sale and bid it out for you. And so that's why you want to really make sure you're working with a forester that you trust and that you get along with. So yeah, there is I would just look at this walks you through it, like why you should, how you can find a forester. They provide you with the same list that I went to, getting a plan, soliciting bids, selecting a logger. So yeah, there is a lot, and I think it could be really intimidating. When you don't own large tracts of land, it's really hard to find somebody. So sometimes you need to have like that forester who's like, okay, well, we have 4 or 5 landowners close to each other. Maybe we can get one logger in there at the same time. Because, there's a whole side of the forest industry where you're not, a logger isn't going to go to a 5-acre plot of land if it's not worth their time or money. And so I'm sure you can imagine how that works out. So Geeta, I would love for you to maybe introduce yourself, or if someone was going to introduce you and talk
I'm
about
going to
what you
introduce
are.
Geeta.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass it over so we can have that conversation.
Awesome. Great. I'll introduce you, Geeta, and then pass it on to you to share information about work that you've been doing. And then I believe Callie has slides up so that way she can do those in the background. Just let her know. But welcome, Geeta Gay. Geeta is a metal sculptor specializing in public art and teaching. With her art, she celebrates natural material sources, including metal, as dynamic and earth-sustaining, with a focus on strength and diversity and sustainability. Her land is west of Red Wing and called Red Oak Woods. 90% of the land is in Minnesota Land Trust easement and is designated Southeast Minnesota Blufflands. There are remnants of indigenous land uses nearby, including a quarry for gathering chert for points and tools. She has 60 acres of forest land in the Managed Forest Program and has done 3 years of buckthorn management through a 5-year EQIP grant. Folks have the opportunity to help with the Prairie Enthusiast Oak Savannah chapter and she makes herbal remedies, forages, and is kicking off her first ever community supported herb craft this season. So she's a wealth of knowledge, and we're excited she's here to share about her work and her land. Welcome, Gita.
Okay, thank you, Maddy, and thank you, Callie. I think it's so amazing, the resources through the GNR and the NCRS. It's pretty incredible. You could go down any rabbit hole you could possibly want, right? And I was going to tag on to what you said about the logging, which I really know absolutely nothing about, but I've probably gone for 3 years in a row to the Friday with the Forester about logging because it's a curiosity in my brain, but I've never really followed up on it. But I know there are a lot of old trees on my land, and I always thinking of like, whenever I need an extra buck for something, I'm like, oh, I could sell a tree, but I'm always a little hesitant, and I'm always looking for other ways. But I have, like you said, the land is in the permanent easement with the land trust. There's quite a few rules about stuff like that. I'd have to go through them. And then there's also my biggest concern with it is probably the wheels, the tires, and how they get where they go, and how much would I really get out of it. And I just haven't had the resources of time to really get that down. I don't foresee doing that in the next decade, but it's nice to know that it's very carefully thought out by people that are looking for ways to do it without harming the existing stuff. But quickly, I'll just say that my land was with my grandparents, and I went there as a kid. Oh yeah, this is really great because it's on the deed to the land. The name of the land is Violet Hill. And this picture is from 1915, and it was my great grandpa wrote on the back of it. It says, "The field and hill across the way from home," because they lived on the other side of the highway. And it says, "Any year the same," which I love that he thought of nature as just like this place that was kind of more recirculating of the same things. Which is the case. Of course, we all know that it changes a lot, especially with invasives. But this hill doesn't look quite like that anymore. But it's in the spring, you can see the shapes of the land a lot better. But it's definitely changed. But that's just to say, like, I've been coming to this land since I was a little kid, and it's always been kind of vacant. My grandparents didn't ever live over there, but there was a farmer that lived there until like maybe 1960, and then their house kind of fell down eventually. I actually hung out with this man in Red Wing who's 100, who played over there, baseball and stuff. He hung out with the family, and he's had so many great stories. And he came over, and even in his 100 years old, he drove over and he talked about growing up there. And he pointed out some things about places that I were recognized as kind of cool, and told me different things about them. One, for instance, is this place that I call the Meadow. That's like this opening in the woods. And he said, that's where they used to play baseball. He said, we used to play right down there, this little slope. And I said, oh, well, that's the Meadow. And it made sense to me why it was a clearing, that it had always been kind of a clearing. Okay, so, and then I'll quickly say that land is in the land trust. And it was luckily that I spoke to this woman, Jan, from Renewing the Countryside. And she's the one who brought the EQIP grant to my attention. And so the biggest problem with my land is the buckthorn. And I'm really excited and glad that I have some funding, and I don't have a lot of resources and people to help with it, but always finding more people that can come and finding different ways to tackle the buckthorn. And I call it a shotgun approach. Like, there's many ways to skin the cat kind of thing. I think everybody has some knowledge about buckthorn, and people are always learning new ways to kill it. So there's no lack of ways to go about that, and lots of work, what's it called, like job security in that realm. So not worrying about running out of something to do. And so this was my map that was made for the EQIP grant. And the orange line kind of shows, well, it's not really easy to tell, but the general shape is like a box that goes to a point at the bottom. That's basically the property. And then these colorful lines are done on that map that I love, that soil map. I didn't realize it had so many layers that you showed, Callie, but the layer I used was just a shape layer where it pulled up the property boundaries, and then you could create these different shapes along what areas that I felt were the best focus areas. And then once you made a shape, it would just like generate the acreage, which made it really easy for me to say, because they said you can't do more than 5 acres a season. And then just being able to kind of clarify what were my focus areas. It ends up being about 30 acres over the course of 5 years, and it's really not going to be like cleared of buckthorn and any stretch of the imagination. If luckily I'll have all the berry producing trees removed from these areas. And it's me with this one young woman who I know who's in the guitar building program in Red Wing, and they've helped me a ton. And a couple other people I know that'll come out and use chainsaws in exchange for deer hunting, which isn't my favorite trade, but it helps with a lot of, there are people that really like to hunt, and then it helps. But with mowing and different jobs that I have, I often trade with people rather than money. And so those shapes were made, and I don't want to talk too long because of questions. Okay, so that was what I needed for my application. And just quickly backtracking too, you do need to have the forest plan to make the application for the grant. The grant pays almost $800 an acre. It's really not a bad amount of money. So it's definitely very worth it to apply for those grants. And I know they have a lot of different grants for different things. I'm really excited to look into a grant for helping replant, because that's another hobby on the side, which again, you could spend all day, and it's so much fun to try to get trees and figure out where they should go and get out in the woods and plant them. But having some financial help with that is really great. So, and then what was the next slide? Oh, right. So this talks back to the forest plan. When I put the land in the land trust, they created this map. This was one of a bunch of maps, like layers, but this was just the cover type map. And it's a nice, graphic to give you an idea what's out there. And then it designates the land trust land. But that's just an example of something that goes in your forest plan, because then what worked out for me was I had a DNR listing, just like what Callie showed, of the different people that can do your forest plan for you. And I hired a timber guy from down by Rushford, down by Winona, who someone told me about. And he did it really quick. But the reason he did it really quick was because the land trust had already done it for this. And so that was helpful. And then once I got that done, I think it was like $1,000 to have the plan done to apply for my tax designation, which is called 2C forest designation land. You have to have the plan for that, but you don't have to do any of the plan. Like if you don't have money or you're working full time and you go to your land on the weekend and smoke a pack of cigarettes, you're still able to have this tax designation that saves, really, it saved me a couple $1,000s every year since I got it. So it definitely paid for itself right away. Yeah. Okay, and then what was the next? Oh yeah, this was to show an app. So now that I had the EQIP grant, it's like, how am I going to know? Because they go in the spring and they technically are supposed to walk the whole thing with you and make sure that you did kill all the berry producing trees. And actually, you're supposed to kill even the non-berry producing trees, which there are a lot of buckthorn that don't make berries because of the different sexes. But you're supposed to kill the big ones too. I guess, their roots have chemicals that are bad for the soil too, so that you get rid of all the bigger trees. And so this is showing how in my app called Onyx, which does cost $35 a year, but I think it's worth it. I put in my shapes, like sitting on my couch one night, I grabbed those different numbers from you have to get like the coordinates and you put that in, and then the Onyx will also give you a shape. Once you put your coordinates, it'll create a shape for you. And then whenever I'm out there, you see on the right, that blue dot is me with my phone going, okay, I'm in the zone. I'm not like in the wrong spot. And it's really helpful. And you can flag your area. I did that, but then I sometimes find my flags later and I don't like finding little bits of plastic in the woods. So I've kind of just used this app without having to. I thought of making cool metal markers because I'm a metal artist, but anyway, and then that red circle is just me showing where I was. I want to remember something in that spot. And then what was the next picture? I wonder, I can't remember. Oh, right. This is just for a hobby that I like finding things like how will we replenish the woods? There's so many natives that you'll find when the buckthorn is removed, or even within the buckthorn layer, there's dogwoods and things that are struggling. And I like to kind of clear around those right when I find them. And then another thing I've done is like this propagating things to bang. And I love Prairie Moon Nursery. They're a great resource for me for seeds and for roots in the fall. And I'll plant stuff in the fall out. And I also do this where I propagate like elderberry. This is an example of propagating elderberry from a living tree. You can just cut them and make new trees with that. And deer like those, so I like having extra. And then the one on the right is a rose, prairie rose. And I think, is that all the pictures? I think that might be. Yeah, so, and my dream is to just not really like harvest a lot, or I don't want it to look like a park. I think there's lots of beautifully managed woodlands all over, and I think it would cost so much that I would never have been able to do that anyway, because there's so much dead wood. Now with the ash dying, there's so much dead ash. And it's almost, if anything, I'll have to get some of those out of the woods because it's kind of dangerous. They'll fall, and they do start falling. And then the thing I really like to do is mapping. I would like to create nice maps for my kids showing different layers of things that I've found that are native and things that I've cultivated. And I love planting trees out in the woods and planting shrubs. And honeysuckle is another one I try to get and kill. And then the last thing is herbal. Like with the land trust, I'm not really allowed to do commercial. There's not a very limited amount of commercial, but I still have a dream I have about 5 acres that aren't in the easement that I'd like to do like an herbal, like storefront, maybe like a farm store on the highway there. And I have an idea to do like walking paths that have natives planted specifically for herbal picking and that kind of picking, make your own teas and that kind of thing for the future. That's my hope, to stick with natives that are, edible. And good. Okay, so we still have 10 minutes for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Gita. That was wonderful. And Callie, do you want to pop back in and unmute yourself, and we'll get everybody. And if you want to stop sharing your screen so we can see your lovely face,
sure. That'd be great.
Awesome. And then Allison as well. Are there any questions for either speaker? Anything from the chat, Noreen or Alex, that you saw?
No, just there was just one about starting some of the trees like elderberry that you were doing. What is the best method? When do I want to do that? And what's the success rate?
Mm-hmm. I should say I'm kind of a DIY person, and I often do like, oh, that didn't work, and I spent 10 hours on it, but I do a lot of trial and error. And I kind of went online. I'm not sure how I thought of that. I think because anyway, I don't remember, but I'm sure there's a way to be really good about it. I probably lose like a quarter of the ones that I plant. But what you do is as soon as the tree is dormant, I have this really strong elderberry from my that I just happen to have in my yard in St. Paul. And so that's the one that I've been propagating. And you know, when you do that, you end up with clones. But I feel like when it's a tree like an elderberry, it's probably okay. I've heard that there's elderberries that are cultivated for making extra fruit, which I think this one might be because it's pretty crazy compared to the regular elderberries that I see in the woods. But so it's really easy. I had that photo with the two little things popping out to show like you cut so that you have two in the winter. And you know what? We should do I was thinking we should do a forest, fun forest, like a resource Google Doc that we could all share. And then we could add our best links in there. I meant to do that last night because like I could put in like the website where I learned to do it. But basically then out of that little node on the stalk, it'll root. And then at the top is where the leaves come out. And you just keep them in your basement or somewhere kind of cold in the nice moist soil over the winter. And they'll usually be sprouting pretty soon in the spring or even in like February. And then I put them outside now. But like I have like 50 every spring and probably half of those get eaten. But sometimes I think I should do better with covering everything. But it's always kind of a toss up of labor versus like extra things that the deer can maybe just eat. I noticed that they never usually eat everything.
Wonderful, thank you. Alexis, too, also provided for landowners interested in easement. She has her email in the chat, so anyone interested in the Wild River Conservancy org, she's a resource for us there too, if they want to do something like that you've done, Gia. And we also had a question too about erosion on Clay County, where I live. It's just the clay, once it starts to erode by the river. Were there any trees that you'd suggest to kind of keep that in place?
Yeah, I think sometimes actually you might want to plant more of like some native, and Gita, you've been looking into this too, but like grass species to get the cover going faster than the trees, you really want to cover your soil first. So I would like plant some grasses and then plant some native shrubs. And we're looking for specific into clay soils. Again, that's where I would probably use that tool and look at your specific soil type and like, is it a mixture of clay and sand or clay and loam or anything like that? Yeah, I'm gonna have to. What area of the state are you in again? Was that
Northwest Minnesota.
Oh, Northwest. Yeah,
and-
you could probably still do like if you're looking for a quick. I know some people are opposed to this because willow can actually spread pretty quick, but you could plant like some willow, we call them whips, into that. So it's almost propagating the same way Gita is with the elderberry, but you just take a cutting and you can basically stick it into the ground. There's more to it than that, so I would look it up, but but yeah, willow can spread quick. So sometimes the aspen or even oak trees are going to do well in there as well. So like the bur oak or red or white oak. Again, I would look at the list of tree species based on your specific soil to know, but like I said, cover it first. So get some like grass seeds out there first. Yeah, hopefully that was helpful.
I see it.
I'll just say one thing. We generally like to do a screenshot of just our participants. So before we keep going with questions and before folks need to hop to other things, if everyone or if you feel comfortable to turn your camera on, if you are able, we will do just a screenshot and I'll give you a count so you know to make any kind of face you would like, whether that is normal or goofy or any of the above. So I'll give you 3, 2, 1. Thank you, everybody. And Gita, you were just about to say something about a question in the chat. So do you want to give a question?
I
Gita?
did write back. It looked like a question about building on easements. And I don't know. I know there are different conservancies that offer easements. And with the land trust, like we had to have a specific talk about buildings. And they definitely limiting that is a thing. And then, but we have like a building envelope that is so it's like a space that's designated for buildings, and potentially like our land has the potential to be split into two pieces based on the conversations we had before we made the easement agreement. So I think you can have, depending how, depending on the people, how they come to the terms together.
And that's forever, correct? An
It's forever.
easement.
Technically, it's forever. I haven't had the need to look into like how technically it is. So luckily, I mean, I think it's perpetual. It goes with the sale of the land if I sold it. More and more, I think people, depending on the type of land, like I don't see it as it used to be, I almost see it as an asset now, I think, because the culture around that kind of thing is changing. And I think people used to say, oh, then your land isn't worth anything because you can't farm it. But I mean, most of my land is too steep to farm anyway, so it's not a problem. There is a 20-acre field that used to be farmed like corn and soybeans, and that is within the easement, and that is now a CRP prairie, and it's been one for almost 20 years, and I'm hoping that it'll stay one. And I mean, but if someone technically were to have bought this land without the easement, they could have turned that CRP back into a farm field for Roundup Ready crops, which isn't the purpose of that. Nobody wants that to happen anyway. So I think that's how I think potentially someone could look at that land and say, oh, I can't farm that. So yeah, it's not as much value to me. But I think most people, there is a lot of farmland that's not being used. And I don't think of it as like taking too much value from the land at all.
And just for our listeners, CRP and putting tree breaks is through the Farm Service Agency. And you'll see the USDA center. So if you're thinking about even putting trees around for a windbreak or CRP, like it is talking about, that's actually through the Farm Service Agency, usually housed by NRCS.
Great. Anything else that folks have questions about? I see we're at the top of the hour at 1 o'clock, and to be mindful of folks' time, maybe Callie and Geeta can stay on a little bit if anyone has a specific question for them. But we'll for sure be sending up resources, the recording of this, so you can watch it again, because I know I need to rewatch it to fully digest all the links and all the information. And on our website, we have some of those upcoming field days that you are welcome to come to, some learning circles and other activities as well. So we'll make sure that everybody gets links to those types of things. But any other questions coming up for folks? Otherwise, feel free to hop off if you need to. Yeah.
I just want to add that obviously forest conservation is a huge topic, and we will be covering more of these dialed in topics with trees and forests as we go along. This was a really high level and high range, but I really want to know more about hiring a logger, or how to hire a forest plan writer and all those things. So I'm just really excited about more topics around forestry and trees. So thank you so much. This was really great.
Thank you. Yeah, I still have questions. I have to just go maybe in like 15, 20 minutes. But probably glad.
Yeah, I have time to stick around too, so.
It definitely is a broad overview, and with NCRS being that you have the whole state, like it's a really large. I mean, you could have like 5 or 6 webinars on different topics within all the things that you touched on, or 10.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's hard to. Yeah, I know we talked about maybe focusing on one particular topic, but after we talked last night, I was like, oh,
well, the forest
overview.
Yeah, the forest management practice is a good one, because I know you like went through those slides pretty quick, but it'd be good to go more detail about that. Like, I'm so curious about the forest fire. It's hard with all the prep because of how old my forest is, But once you have, or not old, but kind of not maintained,
Sure.
if you had more, once you have it ready for the forest fire, then I think you can really do that on a regular maintenance level, just like you would on a prairie. And then you'd have specific trees there aren't that many trees that are okay for it though, as far as I know, right? Like I've heard oak and jack pine. That's all I've heard.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can do, sometimes you can use prescribed fire to help manage your fuel load. We talked about that. You have a lot of downed, like, and dying trees. And so it's like almost too much there if you were to come through and burn it. But yeah, typically oaks withstand a fire really well. Of course, jack pine with their serratinous cones open with extreme heat, so that you want to use fire on those sites to regenerate the forest. But you could really like usually spruce and fir are the ones you don't want to like just light a match to because they will have the oils in them, make them highly flammable. Um, so yeah, using prescribed fire in the forested setting can be good. Really in that whole southeast area and the central region with the oaks would be ideal. And also for helping to manage your buckthorn. There's a lot. Yeah, we didn't get into that as much as I hoped, but the fire and the biological brush control work as well. So yeah.
I know I was excited to talk about my
Yeah.
but we could do a forest document.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah. I love that idea. That's really smart.
And I think too, just because I'm the southeast person, so Geeta, your land is in the area that I work in. I think
Oh.
even doing some sort of learning circle around forestry could be a really great kind of way. And then Callie, to bring in your expertise, whether through Zoom or through in person, I think we can definitely organize those types of things.
Oh yeah, we
Yeah,
could
sky's the limit.
I would love to have like a site. We could do it on site. Because you're in
Yeah.
St. Paul, Callie.
I am, yes. Yeah. Yeah, you're close. So
And I'm going to do what we were talking about on the phone with just some little. I usually do test plots. I've tried my torch on buckthorn. I've decided it's not really worth it, except on like first year or second year sprouts, because like if you see those mats where like all the seeds sprouted, then that's a great place for the torch. But I've found that like even like a pinky size buckthorn, when I torch for a little, it takes a little bit of time to really blacken that bottom of the tree, and a lot of times they'll sprout back as if you had snipped it through after the fire. Even if I blister the whole thing, all of the cambium layers. It's kind
yeah.
of crazy. So then now my new thought was, what if I torch the growing top, like topping it the way they do with leaving it, trying to put the energy up. So I'm going to do a test plot of that.
Yeah, I think after we talked about that, I did dig a little deeper too, like cutting them at that higher level and then just stripping the leaves. If you do it once they've leafed out, it's
Yeah.
like they don't have any more like they're putting all their resources into photosynthesis, and that's what they're doing to feed themselves and like put all the nutrients back in the roots. So if you do it like right after they leaf out, maybe torch it or just cut it and strip all the leaves off of it, that's like the best way to kill it, and then just keep stripping it or torching it maybe into the like September as well, when it's about to take all those nutrients back into the soil. So
That
yeah.
would be really great, because I think I want to try it and see how quickly the tops will burn like that, because it could be just as much time as the broadleaf spray that everybody puts out there, and then that smells bad and it kills stuff.
Right, yeah.
Hopefully that'll be there.
I know, yeah, it almost is like with this method, you shouldn't need to spray. You should just be like killing it at the ideal time. So
And you do
yeah.
have to go back, I think
Mhm.
people really are always looking for a one and done, but it's not going to be that ever.
No, no, unfortunately. Yeah. Not with
And
any of the invasives.
right, I know Rachel and I, who helps me with this one area of parsnips, it was probably like an acre, but they were bad. And we're like, this year, maybe we're only going to see like enough of the second year that we can dig them up. Like we think last year we actually got it down to where there was none except just the ones, the second year ones. But the parsnips are so bad when you're on the highway. It's really disgusting.
Yeah.
But thank you. Thanks so much for inviting me. I was so glad to meet everybody, and it'd be fun to do another one or come to one. I wanted to come to one. How many have you had so far? This just started it.
We've had 3 so far. Yeah, one each month. So yeah, well, we will follow up with everything, and we'll make sure Callie gets your